Okay, I think we are live on LinkedIn and YouTube. Hi everyone, this is Aditya Sharma. Uh, if you can confirm that you can see us live, loud, you can see us absolutely fine. You can hear us loud and clear. That would be great. How are you doing, Solmaz?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
Doing amazing. Just
Thank
traveled back from a conference and a week-long conference from San Diego.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here. As you know, I'm a immigration attorney for Taghavi Immigration Law, and I'm really excited to answer some immigration questions for your community.
Absolutely. So, guys, as you may all know, that today's session is about questions, doubts, concerns related to immigration, and that's where we have our guest Solmaz. We'll get into more details related to her experience, her expertise. But let's confirm if the connections are absolutely fine. Let me quickly check it on LinkedIn and then on YouTube. In the meantime, if you can quickly let me know in the comments box that if you can hear us loud and clear, that would be very helpful. Okay, perfect. So I can see that we are live on LinkedIn and the people are there. Okay. So, guys, let's start with a brief introduction about our location. So, I'm currently okay, Kishore. Thank you for confirming, Kishore. Kitim, thanks for confirming. Kitim Dawson. Okay. So, guys, I'm currently based out in Miami, Florida, and here I've added my location in the chat box. Where are you located, Solmaz?
I'm located in Washington, D.C., our nation's capital.
Amazing. I've never been to White House, never visited there.
Well, it's just down the street from me.
Is it,
You have
it's
to come
more,
visit.
it's no more a touristic location for you?
Yes, very, very touristic location. In
Is
the
it?
summer here, it's going to get very crowded, and a lot of people that don't know how to stay on one side of the sidewalk or one side of the metro.
Okay. A lot of people taking photos outside it, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Okay, Sai is joining in from Columbia, South Carolina. And guys, feel free to invite your friends, your network to join this session. If any one of them have any questions related to immigration, we'll cover all the questions. We'll cover everything from student visa, F1 OPD to H1B to other visa options to a few questions related to how you can also move to Canada. What are those options? Okay. Kishore joining from Dallas, Texas. Kitim is in DC. Okay.
Cool. My neighbor.
Yep. I met a few people in this conference in San Diego, and some people are like just a few blocks away from where I am right now.
Oh, really? That's great.
Yeah. Deep, thanks joining. The Deep for joining from Toronto, Ontario. Okay. So, okay, we can get started, and guys, this session is being recorded. So after this call, this session will be live on YouTube. It will also be the recording will also be available on LinkedIn. If you want, you can always revisit, uh, and you can start typing in your questions in the chat box. Again, as I said, our objective is as you may know, a little bit overview of HiCounselor and myself. Those who are joining for the first time, I'm co-founder and CEO of HiCounselor. We primarily work with uh, students who are recent graduates looking for a job in software engineering and data science domain. We go live for our real world projects almost every week, and that's where we know that there are always questions and concerns related to visa process, right? So this time we thought, why don't we have an immigration attorney who could answer your questions? You can also connect with her if you want more expertise, more details on your specific case. But feel free to ask any question or any doubt that you may have related to immigration. Just put your question in the chat box, and I'll take them one by one. Okay. So, Solmaz, again, thank you so much for taking our time for this call and joining this session. Why don't we start with your introduction, your firm, or your background, your expertise? Yeah, that would be great.
Sure. Well, thank you again for having me. I'm very excited to be here and serve your viewers, people that use HiCounselor or are looking to use HiCounselor. My name is Soulmaz Taghavi. I'm an immigration attorney. It's going to be 10 years this year that I'll be an immigration attorney. I am highly focused on immigration law, so it is the only type of law that we practice at our law firm. Our law firm is Taghavi Immigration Law. Taghavi, as in my last name, you can see here as we are live. You can contact us by going to our website and clicking and scheduling a free case evaluation for 30 minutes. You can go to our social media pages. We're on TikTok, YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram as well. From there, you can watch our videos. I like to do videos on various topics, informational videos to empower people to know about how they can get their immigration status to serve their goals, whether it's short-term or long-term, living in the US or short-term working in the US. We handle all different types of immigration cases, from humanitarian, which could be something like asylum, to family-based, which could be a fiance visa, or maybe you married a US citizen, to employment-based immigration, which is the H-1Bs, the E-2 investor visas, the TN visas for the Canadians and Mexicans. So in representing employers as well as employees who want to work and live in the United States. So I'm really excited to be here. We have offices in Richmond, Virginia. I'm located in Washington, D.C. We also have offices in Phoenix, Arizona, and we can serve people all over the United States, all over the world, since we practice federal law. And we are super automated and virtual. We use technology, and we can really serve everyone no matter where you are, as long as you have an email and a phone.
That's amazing. Thank you so much, Solmaz. And
My
guys,
pleasure.
post the event, I'll also send I'll send an email with all details related to Solmaz social media channels, her website, and if there's any specific email, Solmaz, that you want, for people to contact you, please let me know that. And guys,
Sure.
just for your information, I came to know Solmas through one of her TikTok videos. I was just scrolling and I came across a very informative video, right? And that's how I was like, okay, let me reach out to her. And that's how we are here. So I'll share all those details with you post the event. Solmas, we can jump into questions now. I think people have started
Sure.
adding their questions. So the first one is from Deep Das. Deep says, I'm a recent graduate, majored in computer science and looking for opportunities in the US. My legal status is a Canadian citizen and want to know more about TN visa.
All right. So you're very lucky that you're a Canadian citizen and you want to come to the United States because there is the wonderful TN visa. So the TN visa is awesome because there's no lottery system. So it's different from an H-1B where you have to play and win the lottery, and you may not be chosen and your dreams could kind of unravel. But with the TN visa, as long as you have a job offer in writing for an occupation that is under their specified occupation list, then you can apply for the TN visa, and it's fairly quick. You can actually apply at the border and get your visa and come into the United States. So that is definitely something that we handle. Just make sure that you do have that job offer, and that job offer is on the occupations list. You can find it online. I think we do have a blog about it as well on our website. And I've done a couple videos about the TN visas, but we would be happy to talk to you and help you with the TN visa. It's a fantastic opportunity for Canadians as well as Mexicans to come and work in the US.
Awesome. So the same visa applies is applicable for Mexicans as well?
Yes. Mhm.
Okay. Okay, that's a great information. And you said that people can apply for TN visa on border. So there's it's not a long application process, a file, nothing like that.
So there is an application process, but it can be done fairly quickly. So it
Mhm.
could be done within the same day if you have a fantastic attorney that can make sure they set you up at the right border. And yes, if you don't do it that way, it could be anywhere. It could be like 3 months maximum. So it's a pretty quick turnaround. But the two things that you want to make sure you have is that job offer in writing and that it's on the specialty occupation list for the TN visas.
Got it. Okay, perfect. Solmaz, we received a question uh, just on the flip side of this TN visa process. Uh, that I think there was a question that somebody is currently in the United States. This guy applied for H-1B visa. He's currently on F-1 OPT. He applied to H-1B lottery through his employer, didn't get into H-1B lottery, and now he is looking for how opportunities to move to Canada and find a
Mhm.
job there. But he's not certain about the visa process. Can he do that? If we can cover that question right now, that would be helpful.
So I'm not a Canadian immigration attorney. I'm a
Okay.
US immigration attorney. So I cannot advise anyone who wants to go to Canada.
Mhm.
I'm basically doing the opposite. I'm saying, don't go to Canada, come to the US.
Okay.
They say Canada is vanilla and the US is Rocky Road ice cream. So we are more interesting, more flavorful. But no, Canada is a great country with lots of social benefits that the US doesn't particularly have. But I feel like the US is a great country for people that are entrepreneurs, who are hard workers. They want to put in that time that maybe they get that amazing paycheck. Canada is more of like a socialist country, so I'm not able to give advice. I
Mhm.
do know some good Canadian immigration attorneys, as well as some law firms that do US and Canada immigration law. So I can always refer them out to them, but I can't tell you how to immigrate to Canada.
Mhm. Then we can take the another question that we received. This guy was is currently in the United States on F1 OPT. It's the final attempt of H1B lottery. Still
Yeah.
didn't get into it, and he asked what are the other alternative or what could be his pathway from this point in terms of how he can stay in the US. Uh,
Yeah. So I actually have a list here that I kind of put together. So if he cannot try again the next year, for those who can, they obviously want to keep trying. And you can use OPT if you are on STEM. You can use OPT STEM to have that additional 2 years of OPT. But if you can't try again next year, then you may consider H-1B for cap exempt. So, meaning that you don't have to play the lottery if your employer is a nonprofit or a university. So, maybe those who are doing research and they want to go work for a university, or they can somehow find a job with a nonprofit. There's also certain concurrent filings. So, for example, you could apply with a research company. There is there is a company called I have to remember what their name is, but essentially what they do is they're a research company and they have these fellowships. So someone would come and work for about 5 hours and they will help other students and they will get that exempt H-1B filing. So the cap exempt H-1B filing. And then they'll do a concurrent filing, meaning the next filing will be for a company that is cap subject, meaning subject to the lottery, and they get to basically work both jobs. So using the cap exempt company, they can concurrently file and get that H-1B without playing the lottery. Or you could purely apply and work for a company that is completely cap exempt and you don't have to play the lottery. And so you're just selected as long as you meet all the other requirements. So that's one option. Another is the F1 or the J1, meaning you go back to school. So if you studied your bachelor's, maybe you need to go for your master's. You studied your master's, maybe you need to go for a PhD. The J1 can also be used pretty similarly for doing research as well. So if you need to go to school as well as work in a lab, maybe you could use the J visa as well. Um, the O visa is for those of extraordinary ability. So if you are in a field where you have a lot of publications, you've attended a lot of conferences, maybe you wrote a book, something that shows that you are in the top echelon of your field. And it may not require specific educational requirements if you have a lot of experience, but you do have to have a pretty beefy resume. So your resume has to look pretty good and show that you are of extraordinary ability in your field. So that's the O1 visa. It's a precursor to the EB1A, which would be getting your green card because of extraordinary ability. The way I always say it, it's basically the Leonardo Messi, the soccer player. So he is extraordinary ability in his field. So he is like kind of the extreme example. But if you believe that in your field, you kind of have that resume that we could make that argument, potentially O1 visa could be a path for you. O1 visa is very quick to get. You could get it in 3 to 6 months or even less. And that could be a precursor to a green card. There's also the E3 visas for Australian nationals. So there's some country-specific visas. There's also something similar for those from Chile and Singapore. The TN visas, as we just talked about, would be for Mexicans and Canadians. And then there's the L1 visa. So the L1 visa is an intra-company transfer. So if you work for a company that has an office in the US and you're in a managerial or executive position, you could potentially transfer from, let's say, Coca-Cola in India to Coca-Cola in the US and use the L1 to come to the United States and transfer between those two companies. Or maybe it's even a startup company. So maybe it's a startup based out of San Francisco, but they also have a company or another headquarters in Toronto, and they just want to bring someone, director of engineering from their Toronto office to their San Francisco office. The L1 visa would be perfect for that person. And then dependent spouses. So maybe you have a spouse that has more time on their H-1B, or maybe they have, maybe they're an L visa, or maybe they have some other immigration status that you could be the dependent on their case. You just want to make sure that you're able to work, right? Usually people want to make sure that they can still work as a dependent. You may or may not, just depends on the case type. And then lastly is the green card process. So if you didn't get that H-1B, you didn't win that lottery, ask your employer if they're willing to petition for you to get your green card. Yes, it could be a potentially longer path to getting your green card, but if you're out of any other option, why not? You could try it.
Absolutely. No, these are some wonderful options, and we have follow-up questions on all the options that you just mentioned. The first
Sure.
one is, can spouse of L1 visa work in the US just like H1B?
That I'm not sure. L1 visa, they have changed the laws on
Mm,
that many times, so I want to check.
we can come back to it.
Dependents. Yeah.
Yep. The second question is regarding EB1 green card filing process. The people asking, how does this process work? There are two dates that they found in visa bulletin. One is final action date, and there's one another date that they mention. So, how does this process? If you can explain that really quick, and what is the timeline? I think for Indians there's quite a long wait right now in EB1.
Yeah, for EB1 is the question. Yeah,
Mhm.
so let me go to the visa bulletin right now. Actually, May is out, so let's take a look at those numbers. And also back to the L1 visa for dependents. So it looks like the spouse of an L1 visa can work, but they need to apply for work authorization and get it accepted. So that's
Okay.
good news.
So that's the
Um,
facilities there for sure.
right. Okay. So the visa bulletin is the Department of State's kind of list of visas and what is current, and you may file for something, the USCIS may give you an answer approval, for example, but you have to wait in line because of your category. So there are 2 dates that they will list. And there's the final action dates, and then there's the dates for filing of employment-based visas.
Yep.
So basically, the first section, which says final action dates for employment-based preference cases, they're going to have all chargeability categories. Usually for EB1, it's going to be current because, like I said before, EB1 is the extraordinary ability visa. So they are the Mac Daddy. They are the people that are supposed to be Nobel Peace Prize winners and to be top in their field. So under the all chargeability categories, meaning everyone who is not in a specialty country list, it's usually going to be current. So for May, meaning next month, EB1 for all chargeability categories is current. That's when you'll see the C for current.
Mm-hmm.
But if you look over at China, India, Mexico, Philippines, you're going to see other numbers. So for India, for EB1, it's March 21. So March 1st, 2021. That means that when you file your I-140, so your I-140 is your employer's petition for you, it's going to have a priority date. Priority date is going to be very similar to the date that you filed the application, but it's basically the date in which USCIS receives your case, makes sure it has everything on its face, and then enters it into the system. It's like the start date of your petition. So you have to have, your priority date has to be after the date that is published here. So March 2021, meaning that you can only file for your green card if your priority date is, for example, March 2nd, 2021. So it has to come after this date. And right now, Mexico and Philippines also shows this current, but India is backlogged, is what we use, that terminology is backlogged. And then China is also backlogged to September of 2022, September 1st, 2022. So when your petition is current and it's been approved, then you can go ahead and file for your green card. Technically, you can use the second chart, which is the dates for filing of employment-based visa applications. You can do the same thing here in order to file your application, but it won't be adjudicated because it may not be current. So this will allow for people to file earlier and to potentially get their work authorization while the case is pending, but they're not going to really make a decision on those cases until it's actually current based off of that first chart A.
Mm-hmm. So
hopefully that makes sense.
yes. So quick follow-up question on it, Solma. So let's take an example. If somebody is in the United States, and is an Indian citizen, right, and files for EB1 case, uh, in premium processing, I think premium processing is available there, right? Uh,
Yep.
do they get, I mean, will this person get a decision that, okay, you meet all the EB1 criteria, right? The way you get in the O1 visa immediately in 15 days, or will this person have to wait until this current date shows up?
So the premium processing, so we have the employer petition and then we have the green card, right?
Mhm.
So it's kind of what I describe as step 1 and step 2. Step 1 is that employer petition. If you can do premium processing, that means you pay an extra government filing fee. Right now, they've raised it to almost $3,000.
Wow.
But if you pay that extra government filing fee, they will give you a decision. Immigration will give you a decision within 15 days.
And these dates don't matter.
They do matter.
Okay.
So you get the decision and you know that, hey, I am of extraordinary ability. I have received the EB1 and it's been approved. This is a peace of mind for the employer and the employee.
Mm-hmm.
But you are still waiting for that visa to be current. So even though it's approved, whether it's in 6 months or in 6 days, you still have to have it be current with the visa bulletin in order to file for step 2, which is for your green card.
Hmm. And can spouse of the applicant work after this first approval? If it is approved, can spouse file EAD?
No. So the approval does not, so step 1, which is that employer petition, does not come with any work authorization. It's just
Mm.
saying that you meet the requirements for the petition, it's been approved, but you can only get that work authorization when you apply for the green card, which is step 2.
Mm.
So you
Okay.
can't do that until you're approved and current.
Okay. I hope that has answered, or has provided clarification for EB1 process. Let's take our next question from Nicole. I want to know more about EB2 visa and criteria to be eligible.
Yes, so the E2 visa, EB2 visa is very similar to the EB1, except it's a little bit of a lower threshold. So let's pull this up. I also want to talk about the NIW, which is the National Interest
Mhm.
Waiver. It's something that can be used with the EB2, but let's just talk about the EB2. So with the EB2, you get a green card. And it's similar where there's a step 1, which is the employer petition, and the step 2, which is for your green card, and making sure you get that approval and making sure your visa is current before you go to the next step. So there's 2 subcategories for the EB2. One is the advanced degree. So basically, you have to have an advanced degree, or you can show exceptional ability. So if you don't have the advanced degree, but you can show that in the science, arts, or business, you have exceptional ability. How does immigration define exceptional ability? Quote, means a degree of expertise significantly above that ordinarily encountered in the science, arts, or businesses. And then there's different criteria. So they have different factors that they list, and you have to meet at least 3 of those factors. So usually when we're trying to see if someone qualifies for the EB2, what we do is request their resume as well as their LinkedIn page. And
Mhm.
with their resume and LinkedIn page, we can kind of go through these factors and see, okay, out of these 10 factors, which of them can we argue at least 3 that you meet for this exceptional ability? So EB1 is extraordinary ability, and then EB2 is exceptional ability, or instead of the exceptional ability, you have an advanced degree.
And you also want to cover about NIW?
So NIW stands for National Interest Waiver. With the NIW, basically you're saying that the work you do is of national interest. So USCIS released a policy memo saying that STEM, so jobs that are in STEM, are kind of would really fall into that category potentially. But just to give you some examples, so anyone who's working in AI, who's working on internet, making sure that all parts of the world have internet, satellite capability, anything that is pro-environment. So things that are really on the cutting edge of technology that would be of importance to the United States. And then you have to show that you're in a position to put forth whatever this work of national interest is. So what does that mean? That means that if you are, let's say, you're developing some sort of biomedical equipment for people that are in the military and they're out in war, and they can kind of use this equipment to figure out whether, basically like a doctor, that they can put this equipment on, see their vital signs, and give them feedback of like what to do because this person is injured. And basically you are in a startup and you're creating this type of, biomedical wear that you can put on. Um, what are you doing to then put it forth in the United States? So if you're just sitting there in a lab and you aren't applying for grants for the US military to use it, how are you really putting this kind of work forward? Or how are you going to kind of be in a position to present this type of work? You can't just be there on your own writing articles. So you're either doing consulting work, maybe you are getting grants from the US military, or something where you are actually putting this work forward and you're in a position to do so.
Okay, that's very helpful. Let's
And
move on.
sorry, the great thing about the NIW is you don't need an employer. So that's
Mhm.
when it comes in of like, how can you put forth, how are you positioned to put this kind of work forward? Because you don't even need an employer. Obviously, it's great if you do because they can write a letter, a fantastic letter for you. But you don't need an employer. You can self petition and you don't have to go through what's called the labor certification process. So it's a very difficult process of advertising for the position, showing that no other US citizen can fulfill that position, and having to pay that person by the Department of Labor a certain amount. So you don't have to do any of that. It makes it a lot easier, but you still have a lot more other things that you have to demonstrate to immigration.
Mhm. Solmas, that clearly tells that F1 OPT and H1B are not the only two options. When I was
Yeah.
studying at Duke and I was graduating, and also when I worked with Deloitte on H1B, I was like, okay, are there any other options? But when you talk about NIW, when you talk about EB2, right, it seems like there are a lot of options if explored properly with an immigration attorney.
Sure. And one thing I want to mention that would have been great for you, um, or someone like yourself, if you're an entrepreneur, you could do the E2 visa. So EB stands for employment based, but what I'm referring to is just the E2 treaty visa. It's an
Mhm.
investor visa. So there are specific countries, so you have to be a national of those specific countries on that treaty list. But basically, if you start a company in the United States, or maybe you purchase an existing company, or you purchase a franchise, or you become a co-owner of a company in the United States, you can get a temporary work visa to come in and do your investment, start your business. And the investment amount is just a substantial amount. So it's not even a very specific requirement. So usually we recommend around 100,000 of an investment. And
Mhm.
that means, purchasing the office space, maybe the equipment, the marketing, the staff, things that you're going to already pay for in order to start a business. But showing that you're going to start that business is going to be active and not just sitting there. You could also do the E2 treaty investor visa. I think this is great for
Mhm.
startups that want to start their own businesses in the US. Maybe they're doing raising some money, some funding. They can do the E2 treaty if they're a national from a country listed there. And then they could use the L to bring people from other countries if they have multiple locations. So that would be a great thing for, I think, people in the Bay Area, similar to yourself that have some new business ideas.
That's amazing. I never heard about E2 treaty visa
Yeah,
ever.
yeah.
No, absolutely, yeah. And
Okay.
as you may know, like I have O1 visa. I'm on the process for EB1 green card, uh, but never heard of E2 visas. Thanks for letting me know about that.
Yeah, yeah, we have plenty of videos about it. It's one of my favorite visas. I myself am an entrepreneur, so I love to help people that are interested in starting their businesses. And yeah, I think
Yeah.
it's a great way to come to the US.
Okay, perfect. Let's take next question from Dawson. Are you able to answer questions related to green card, especially through marriage?
Yeah, absolutely. That is our bread and butter is doing green card applications, called spousal visas. So really what you're looking for here is whether the person, the intending immigrant is in the United States or outside of the United States. So I'm sure a lot of your viewers are on F1 visas. Maybe they're on OPT. Maybe they met the love of their life at school and they want to get married, and the love of their life is a US citizen. So if your entry was lawful, meaning you came in legally with the student visa, H-1B, as long as you entered legally and you get married to a US citizen, you then can do what's called an adjustment of status. So changing your lawful status from a student visa to obtaining your green card. It's a very straightforward process. Obviously, it's more straightforward than if your employer petitioned for you, because you're really just proving two things. One, that it's a true or bona fide marriage. So they want to see that you live together, that you had a courtship. The other person had, bought an engagement ring. Maybe you had a wedding. You own a car together. That person's on your health insurance. Things like that to show that, yes, this is a true relationship. It's not done for immigration purposes. And second, that the petitioner, who's going to be the US citizen, can financially sponsor you. So if your spouse is also a student and they don't have a job yet and they cannot sponsor you, then they can get a co-sponsor, like maybe their parent or an aunt or an uncle, someone that has their green card or who's a US citizen who can be the financial petitioner, and you just have to make above the poverty guideline. So you'd be surprised that maybe if you're doing some side work and you're working as a student, you may be able to support your spouse and make above the poverty guidelines on your own. So yeah, we can definitely answer questions. If you have any other specific ones, I'm happy to answer those for you.
Absolutely. The next question is from Shrutanvi, and I think Solmaz, I've come across this type of questions so many times in the last
Mm-hmm.
1 or 2 years. I'm currently on F1 OPT. I've currently an opportunity for freelancing projects with a company called Data Annotation. However, they're not providing any official offer letter, but they have provided an email saying that I can start working on their projects on the website after reviewing my work. Also, the payment mode is going through PayPal. Can I start working with them on project? Is it even allowed to take side paid projects outside of your school on F1 OPT?
So it's gonna really depend. So if you are on OPT STEM or OPT regular, so OPT STEM has a little bit more requirements. And actually, the employer on OPT STEM has to fill out a form. And in that form, they have to specify some information that this is related to your field of study, that they are providing X amount of hours to you. So I would say that the regular OPT is a little bit more relaxed. There aren't as many requirements on either end. But with OPT STEM, there is a form, and I do encourage people to have a written letter. So it's because you want to have it documented for your own future. It's not likely that that would become a problem, but my advice would be get a written offer letter and have a W-2 and pay stubs.
Okay.
Getting paid through PayPal, just sending an email, it's not going to be in your best benefit. It doesn't mean that you're violating your OPT per se, but it doesn't really fulfill the kind of like documentation requirements that I would recommend for my clients. So that's what I would recommend. Get your W-2s. It should be formal. Even if you're considered a contract worker, they can give you a 1099. So you have some proof that you were paid X amount and that you complied with any tax filings that may have been required of you. and then having that written letter. If they send an email, they should be able to send a letter. It shouldn't be that big of a problem. So yeah, that's what I recommend. If it's regular OPT, if it's OPT STEM, I definitely recommend that you have those two, because they'll also have to fill out another form. So it shouldn't be too much work for them. They may not understand that what they're doing is completely legal, so maybe they're afraid to put things in writing because of it. So that may be the hesitation around it.
Hmm. And Shrutanvi, just to clarify, is your purpose with this freelancing job to stop your OPT counter, right? As we have this 90 days OPT counter in first year, is that your objective, or probably do you already have another, say, job on OPT and your OPT counter is all settled, but you have this another freelancing opportunity that you want to pursue? So if you can again comment and let us know, because this is very common question, right? People get a lot of freelancing opportunities these days, but they're not sure whether they can do it or not. Okay,
Right.
okay,
Yeah, I
cool.
think it goes back to your goals, right? What are you trying to achieve?
Mhm. Okay, let's take another question from Tribald. Hey, as an entrepreneur in AI space, is this helping in any way? I guess, Tribald, your question was around EB1 or EB2, I think, what you mentioned, that work in AI puts you into NIW category or like specific work
Yes.
category, right?
Yes, absolutely. So working in AI, that is the next biggest wave of technology that is extremely of national interest, extremely useful. So yes, I would say that, especially you're an entrepreneur, right? You are in the position to put forth this type of work. So I think AI plus being an entrepreneur, I'm not sure if you're a consult. Are you seeing all these backgrounds?
Yeah,
I have
I
no
have
idea how
no
this works. I
idea.
think it's the iPad. So sorry if you see all these
No,
thumbs and balloons.
yeah, it has
Um,
created good environment there. I was like, oh, if I could have them, that's amazing.
yeah, those fireworks were for you, Tiago. Um, Absolutely. Entrepreneur in AI space, you should send us your resume, your LinkedIn page. Um, you can send it to intake, INTAKE at tilimmigration.com. And you sound like the perfect person that could potentially do the national interest waiver. Um, AI is definitely a space that's of national interest. And if you have your own company as an entrepreneur, then you are exactly in the position to put forth that type of work into the US.
Okay, this is very helpful. Let's move on to the next question from Kishore. I'm a recent graduate currently in my initial OPT. My doubt is it legal to make money by doing freelance work related to my master's education? I think it's very similar to the previous question that
Yeah.
we had. So again, so there is no yes or no answer, Solmaz, right? Can they do freelancing or can they not do freelancing?
Um, Technically, you're not supposed to. Uh, I don't know. This is a difficult question to answer, because I feel like there's more questions I would want to ask, like how is it related to your work? What is the full time your work that you're doing? How many hours? So I feel like that's more of a one-on-one
Hmm.
answer to that question. So yeah, I have to pull the attorney card and not give you a specific answer on this one.
No, and I've noticed in my so I came to US in 2014 for my masters. It's been like 10 years, and I encountered many situations, right, to land my full-time job, to start a company, to while raising funds. That in many
Hmm.
situations there is no yes or no answer, right?
Yeah.
Even my attorney had to understand, asked a lot of questions, right, and then they came up with a solution of it, right? It's not like, okay, this is allowed or this is not allowed, because there are n number of like potential permutations and combinations.
Yeah. I agree with you. My response to that would be, what sometimes there are hard and fast rules, other times it's in a gray area and there's an argument that can be made, and it's just how much risk do you want to take? And then your lawyer will answer that question for you, like, is this a risk worth taking or not? But let me give you a clear and bright answer related to this question. If you're on an H-1B and you're working for an employer, so let's say you're working for Bloomberg and you are doing uh, computer learning, AI learning, and you're working as an engineer for Bloomberg on that H-1B. And then you decide to do a freelance of, I don't know, helping someone create a website. That you cannot do
Hmm.
because the H-1B is connected to your job at Bloomberg. So if you're going to start a side business, or whether it's Uber driving or doing website work, any kind of freelance work, you cannot take on a side job without getting another work visa, maybe another H-1B, for example, from that employer. So freelance, entrepreneurship, or another formal side job or not, you cannot do that on an H-1B. I think OPT is a little bit more unique because it's not a specific visa from a specific employer. So that's what I can answer for you, if that's helpful.
Hmm. Yep. Okay, moving on to another question from Deep Das. Okay, guys, we have only 10, 12 minutes, so we can run through questions really fast. I think Deep Das asked first question related to, let me go through it again. That was related to getting into US as a Canadian citizen. So that was around like TN visa. So follow up, would the US employer need to sponsor a potential candidate from Canada, and while applying for job they be legal to work in the US? So should it be done by an employer, this TN visa process, or by the candidate who's in the who's in Canada right now?
So with the TN visa, it's not a formal petition by an employer. It's kind of like a special type of visa given to Canadians and Mexicans because of the NAFTA treaty. So the employer is not going through like a labor certification process. They're not playing the lottery. They're not advertising the position. They're not interviewing, requesting, the how much they should pay you under Department of Labor. None of that is happening. It's something that you're probably an immigration attorney is going to be the one filing for you. So
Hmm.
you'd hire an immigration attorney. We would say we need these things from your employer, basic things, but the most important is that written job offer. And then we submit that package to the consulate or even at the border. And that's how they would kind of apply for the TN visa. So I'm not sure if that answers the question there.
No, I think that's absolutely clear now. Another question is from Apple. Apple is a nice name. Hey, actually, I heard a lot about Windows during visa interview. Isn't it a desk and chair setup for interview? I'm confused. Yeah, a lot of people ask, hey, like interview for visa for like green card, or like is it like actually you go to somewhere and give an interview?
Yeah, you do. So for example, the spousal green card that someone else was asking about, they will call you in for an interview and they want to see the couple together. They want to see, are they holding hands? Are they wearing their wedding ring? How do they interact with each other? And yes, it's a desk. A lot of them have windows as well, if they're in an office with a window. And a lot of those interviews are recorded. They do finger biometrics, eye biometrics. You do a swear under oath that you're going to tell the truth, and then they conduct the interview, confirming the information in your forms. So yes, it is an actual interview with a desk and chair setup.
Mhm.
That's one of the most interesting questions I've received.
Yeah. We hear a lot of things about related to visa process and everything, but to actually visualize it, I mean, it's altogether
Yeah,
different thing.
yeah. And we actually, when we go to conferences for AILA, stands for American Immigration Lawyers Association, we get to go to conferences in other countries, and we get to do, they will do a tour of the US consulate. So I've done it in Johannesburg, South Africa, in Paris. So it's very interesting. We get to see the machines where they actually put the passports through and the visas get stamped into them. So yeah, I mean, it looks just like a regular office, but
Awesome. I think so Shrutanvi asked that question about like doing a freelancing project. So she mentioned that she's an OPT, and she actually has something else to stop her OPT counter, but this is just another opportunity. So Shrutanvi, as Solmaz mentioned, that it depends on many scenarios, and she would like to have a one-on-one discussion, right, to give you a perfect answer. So I'll
yeah.
share her details like after this call in an email, right? And if you want, you can reach out to Solmaz and you guys can connect. Okay. Nicole says, in case of an EB2 visa, having a PhD degree from India, is it enough?
Um, I don't know about the word enough, but that is definitely a requirement. So yes, if you have a PhD, you also have to make sure that everything is a US equivalent. So from your bachelor's, master's to PhD, that everything passes one of these equivalency tests to make sure that it is a US equivalent degree. And I believe you also have to have 5 years of post baccalaureate work, so experience in that field. And yeah, I mean, I would never say, is it enough? Because there's a lot more requirements. So we have to make sure, but that's definitely a good starting point.
Mhm. And she also asked, do we need to have papers with many citations? Is there any quantification of the number that can be done?
So, no, it's definitely not a specific number. We go through those 10 factors and we kind of see where you have the strongest argument to be made. Definitely having publications is great. I get the same question about letters. Like, if I have 10 letters from people in my field, is that enough? Well, we need to look at everything else. So, it's kind of like a balance. Um, but that is one type of requirement. Another requirement may be that you have a membership in a professional field. It could be that you won specific awards. It could be that other people are citing to your work, other people that maybe are higher up in the field, they're using your work and citing to it. And that is something more than just 10 publications that no one is really doing much about in the field, that it's not very important in the field of your work. um, and then also commanding a high salary, that's another factor. So maybe your salary is really high because they really want to keep you around. So there's several factors to be considered for the EB2. But you could have no citations, but you are heavy on some of the other factors, and that could potentially work as well, or vice versa.
So it's the entire package, basically, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Hmm.
And that's when, going back to, there's no like black and white answer. This is when your lawyer comes in, and I've had, um, clients in the past that said, well, I don't think that I'm extraordinary. And I look at their work and I'm saying, yes, I think you are. Let me make that argument. Let me make that argument about why the work you're doing is fantastic. And even if you're kind of on the edge or you're not sure, if you have a fantastic attorney with experience, we can really, really persuade you. And that same client got an approval in like 3 days. And that was an NIW case. So I think having an attorney to look at your specific resume and LinkedIn page, we can really kind of flesh out kind of your strengths and weaknesses for a potential case.
And to add to your point, Solmaz here, uh, guys, I've got O1 visa 2 times, and they call it like visa for people with extraordinary ability. I can
Mm-hmm.
tell you, when I looked at O1 visa criteria for the very first time, I was not able to meet even one of the 8 or 9 criterias. And I come from a background with not a very scholar academics background, like a very mediocre student, right? an average throughout my education career. But still, if you work with the right attorney, as Solmaz mentioned, right, I was able to get O1 visa 2 times, start my company. So don't self reject yourself based on the definition of O1 or EB1 or EB2 when they say like people with extraordinary ability. Uh, just explore the option, right? Because you actually don't need to get a Nobel Prize, honestly, to meet some of the to
Yeah,
meet the criteria, right?
yeah,
They just say it that you need to have like a Nobel Prize winner, but it's not like that.
yeah. Yeah, that's just an easy way to describe it for people, but let your attorney be the judge of
Yeah.
your work. And then that's basically what we do is we make creative arguments. We are your advocate. Nothing in the law is guaranteed because we don't make the decisions. You
Yeah.
know, an official USCIS officer or a judge will make a decision if it's immigration court, but we are there to advocate for you and we have the repertoire to do so. So we have other examples, we have other past cases, we have the statute, and different laws where we can kind of argue and put your best foot forward. And at least in my practice, I don't recommend a case type and I don't offer send a contract unless there is an argument to be made.
Hmm.
So it's not that we just send them out no matter what. It's only if we really believe that we can win this case, even if it's going to be a little bit tough, maybe a little bit more paperwork, but we believe we can do it. And that's why we're offering you a contract.
Hmm. That's amazing. Guys, thank you so much for joining, for your questions. And Solmas, thanks a lot for sharing your advice on all the questions. We could get like 50 more questions. I have a lot of questions from when people commented on my post, but we are running out of time. Uh, so, guys, I'll share Solma's details with all of you and with the recording of this session. Feel free to get in touch with her, and we'll probably do way more sessions like this in the future and
Yeah.
have more audience there. But thank you so much, Solmas, for your time, and couldn't
Thank
thank
you
you
so much for having me. Yeah, this has been really fun, and I hope we can do it again.
enough. Absolutely. Well, you have a wonderful weekend. It's all we are
Thank
almost
you.
there, right? So thank you so much for joining, and thanks everyone for joining this session. Have a wonderful day ahead. Bye.
Thank you.